Okay, so let's dive into this. Picture it. Brussels, right? A hallway.
Mm-hmm. After meeting.
And you've got White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, well, basically ambushing Canadian PM Mark Carney.
Yeah, not a scheduled press conference,
Yeah.
just this encounter.
Yeah.
Spontaneous.
Exactly. And the tension, you could, feel it. She's got these piercing questions ready, mainly about Trump's tariffs.
And you get the feeling she thinks she's going to, win this round, maybe settle an old score.
Definitely seems like it. She expected to dominate. There's this whole anticipation vibe.
And the backdrop is interesting, too, isn't it? You mentioned the hallway, but think about the flags. Canada, EU, Japan, Australia.
Right. It signals this isn't just U.S.-Canada. It's got wider ripples.
Exactly. Yeah. Much bigger implications. You hear the cameras clicking, that low hum. It really sets the scene.
So Levitt, she just jumps right in. No warm-up.
Straight to it.
She goes after Canada's defense plans, specifically canceling the F-35 jets and the P-8A patrol aircraft contracts.
And she uses that phrase, "Sobgrippen."
Yeah.
Kind of dismissive, right?
Yeah, like asking if older tech can really replace top-tier American stuff. Real skepticism there.
And then pivots immediately.
To the Mexico relationship, this cozy alliance, she calls it.
Questioning how teaming up with Mexico on NAFTA helps Canadian jobs.
It's pretty aggressive 1-2 punch to start things off.
Definitely designed to put Carney on the back foot. Questioning security, questioning economic partnerships.
But Carney apparently stays pretty calm through this initial barrage.
Yeah, very measured. He comes back with facts.
On the defense contracts, he points out, well, wait a minute. Trump's 25% tariffs. They jacked up the F-35 cost by $2 billion Canadian dollars.
That's a huge number. And he makes the point that the alternative, the Griffin, isn't just 30% cheaper.
But it comes without, and this is his phrase, political strings.
A clear jab back about the unreliability or the cost associated with the U.S. deal because of the tariffs.
Right. And then on Mexico, he flips the script.
How so?
He doesn't see it as cozy. He frames it as a strategic, protecting jobs.
The auto sector jobs. How many was it?
60,000 Canadian auto jobs, he says. And it helps balance North American trade overall.
So he's directly countering her narrative. He's saying, look, U.S. policy caused the defense shift, and the Mexico alliance protects our workers. It's data-driven.
You'd think that might cool things down, but Levitt escalates. She goes personal.
Uh-oh. Where does she go with that?
She brings up Carney's past, his background in finance, Wall Street.
Trying to paint him as maybe not fully loyal to Canada, using the Mexico alliance as proof.
Exactly that. Questioning his allegiance, suggesting maybe his old ties influence him. It's a classic political tactic, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Shift from policy to personality. Try to sow doubt. But reports suggest Carney was thinking, I'm fighting for Canada here, not Wall Street.
And that's when Carney seems to decide, okay, time for an economic counterattack.
Right, hitting back on the numbers.
He brings up Canada's GDP growth, 1.8%.
Which, importantly, was actually outpacing many other G7 nations at the time.
Yeah, a solid point about economic health. Then he circles back to tariffs, Canada's tariffs.
The retaliatory ones.
Good 25% ones, yeah. He says those are protecting the 60,000 auto jobs, mainly Ontario and Quebec. And he champions the USMCA, the updated NAFTA deal with Mexico.
Right. The argument being it locks in fair labor environmental standards.
Which protects jobs right across Canada, Vancouver to Moncton, he says. It's a direct challenge to the whole premise of Trump wanting to redo NAFTA.
So he's not just defending, he's actively pushing back, showing Canada's actually doing okay, maybe even thriving in some areas, despite the trade war.
Yeah.
Undermining the U.S. pressure narrative.
Then it really becomes tit for tat. Levitt hits back, claiming Carney's policies are costing jobs, that the Mexico deal is bad.
And the oil pivot, what does she say about that?
Dismisses it. Calls it a desperate move, basically. Canada scrambling because the U.S. market is tougher.
Okay, so how does Carney respond to that? More data.
Yep. He repeats the 60,000 jobs saved number. Then he lands a punch about the U.S. impact.
Oh.
Oh.
What specifically?
He points to Michigan. Says U.S. tariffs cost Michigan businesses $5 billion in lost exports just last year.
Wow. That brings it home for an American audience, doesn't it? Puts a real number on the U.S. costs.
Definitely. And on the oil. He explains why Canada is shipping more to Asia.
Let me guess U.S. policies.
Pretty much. U.S. taxes, canceled pipelines like Keystone XL. He says they forced Canada's hand.
So sending 900,000 barrels a day to China, India, Japan via the Trans Mountain Pipeline wasn't desperation, it was adaptation.
That's the argument. And he links it directly to Well, Americans paying $4 a gallon for gas.
Oof. Connecting the trade dispute directly to the pump price. That's sharp.
You can sort of feel the momentum shifting here, can't you? Her aggressive start is met with these factual body blows.
For sure. So Levitt tries a different angle.
Yeah, she pivots to security. Plays the America protects your card.
Mm-hmm. How can Canada defend the Arctic without those F-35s? That kind of thing.
Exactly. And still pushing the idea that the oil diversification is just, flailing.
But Carney seems resolute. There's that mention of his internal thoughts, his dad's words about unity.
Yeah, the goalie on Arctic ice image. Standing strong.
And interestingly, the EU folks are apparently paying closer attention now.
Right. They realize this isn't just a sideshow. It has bigger implications.
So does Carney bite on the security question?
Not directly, not yet. He doubles down on the economics first.
The smart. Keep hammering the strong points.
He talks about how integrated the auto industry is. Parts back and forth across the border. Windsor, Oshawa, Alliston.
Feeding plants in Detroit, Dallas.
Right. And how Trump's tariffs hurt American consumers and businesses in those places, too. It's not a one-way street.
Reinforcing that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And the oil again.
Yep. Hammers the 900,000 barrels to Asia Point, linking it again to U.S. refinery impacts and gas prices, making it clear this has consequences for the U.S. side.
So he's really driving home the point that these U.S. policies have blowback.
Then Levitt makes this accusation. She claims Trump offered to ease the tariffs if Canada just cooperated.
Implying Canada refused a deal.
Yes. And Carney confirms he refused, but he frames it as rejecting coercion. He says Canada prefers cooperation, not being strong-armed.
Okay, that's a principled stand. Does he back it up?
He does. He throws out more numbers. Exports to the EU are up $50 billion.
Wow.
Asia exports up 15%. Trade with Japan specifically, up 10%.
So showing diversification is actually working.
And he mentions new gas projects in BC with Qatar.
Qatar. Interesting. Supplying who?
Germany and the Netherlands, he says. Basically stepping into the gap left by, well, others.
So Canada's not just finding new markets, but becoming a key energy player for Europe, too, and potentially taking market share the U.S. might have wanted.
That seems to be the implication. He's painting a picture of Canada proactively building new partnerships, not just reacting defensively.
Okay, Levitt must try to counter that somehow. How does she respond?
She tries to pour cold water on it, basically says, come on, Canada can't really replace the U.S. market.
The scale's just too different.
That's her argument. She questions if Vancouver and Halifax ports can even handle the volume, calls the gas deals a sign of a struggling economy, grasping at straws.
Trying to minimize Canada's alternatives, make them seem insignificant. Classic negotiation. Maintain the idea of dependence.
But then the mood shifts a bit. A Canadian reporter, CBC, steps in.
Okay, what's the question?
Brings it back down to earth. Asks about the impact on regular Canadians, rising grocery costs, rent. Specifically mentions Regina Moncton.
The human cost of the trade war.
Yeah. And presses Carney for reassurance. Are these pivots, the Mexico alliance, really going to work out for everyday people? You can hear the genuine concern.
And Carney's reaction.
Reportedly, he feels that weight. It acknowledges the real-world impact. There's this sense of commitment, like, I can't let these families down.
That human element is important. But Levitt jumps back in.
She does. Goes for another attack line. Border security.
Accusing Canada of being weak on border security.
Yes. And also of destabilizing global energy markets with these new deals. Pretty serious charges.
Okay, Carney needs a strong reply to that.
And he has one. On border security, he points out seizures are actually up 40% in BC and Quebec.
So Canada's doing its job.
And then he turns it around, basically asks, well, where's the demand for this contraband coming from? Hinting at U.S. cities.
A deft redirection. And on energy markets.
He repeats the point about the Qatar gas projects. Says they're helping Europe replace Russian supplies, stabilizing prices.
So far from destabilizing, Canada is actually helping.
Oil, she emphasizes. And that the whole Mexico alliance is just a cover, a smokescreen for this secret deal.
Whoa. That's massive. How does the room react?
Stunned silence, apparently, especially the Canadian reporters. The EU aides are exchanging urgent looks. If that were true.
It would be politically explosive in Canada. A potential game changer. High-stakes move by Levitt.
Absolutely. But Carney's response is immediate and forceful.
A denial.
A flat, unequivocal denial. He says Canada simply doesn't trade away its resources like that, period.
And the Mexico deal.
He brings it back to the USMCA, says it's about fair trade, balanced commerce, protecting, now he says, 100,000 jobs, and setting a positive example.
So Reinforcing sovereignty and transparency. How does that land?
Huge relief from the Canadian press. They actually applaud.
Applause in a scrum like that tells you something. A sense of vindication, maybe.
Definitely feels like a turning point. But Levitt, she still has one last try.
Still fighting. Wait now.
A prediction, really. She says Canada's economy will collapse before the election. Voters will turn on Carney. Calls the energy pivots reckless.
Trying to plant seeds of doubt about the future? Fear tactic.
Yeah. But Carney seems internally focused, just on fighting for ordinary Canadians.
And then she pulls out a report.
Her final card holds up this document, claims it proves Canada is cutting lumber exports to appease the U.S.
Trying to show Canada is buckling under pressure, after all.
Seems like it. But Carney apparently sees right through it, recognizes it as a bluff.
He knows the details, knows it's not true.
Exactly. Which leads to, well, the mic drop moment.
Ah, the big finale. What does he say?
He calls the report baseless pure fiction. Just shuts it down completely.
Okay.
And then he just unleashes this rapid-fire summary of Canada's position. Boosted trade with EU, Asia, the 100,000 jobs protected, balanced budget.
Wow, just laying it all out.
Export growth to Japan, 10%.
Yeah.
Germany, 15%. New markets in South Korea. The 900,000 barrels of oil to Asia.
He's really connecting all the dots he made earlier.
And hammers the point again. U.S. tariffs, U.S. pipeline cancellations, forced our hand, the Qatar gas deals, they're powering Europe, creating revenue for Canada.
A complete rebuttal, point by point.
And he finishes by saying Canada is willing to talk, always, but won't be bullied. Canadians deserve respect.
That's a powerful closing statement, asserting strength, principle, and national dignity.
And the effect is immediate. Leavitt just lowers her microphone, speechless, visibly defeated.
The room must have erupted then.
Pretty much. Applause breaks out, led by the Canadian journalists. Even the Australian and Japanese aides are nodding, showing approval, respect.
So a clear win for Carney in that exchange, a public defense of Canada's stance.
And then, almost like a punctuation mark, the Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, suddenly appears.
Really, just walks up.
Walks right up, firm handshake with Carney, and says publicly that Canada's unity strengthens everyone. Carney's leadership sets a global standard.
Wow. Talk about a public endorsement in front of all the cameras.
Huge moment of international solidarity. Really underscores Carney's position.
What happens to Levitt?
She just slips away with her aide, Jake, almost unnoticed in the commotion.
A quiet exit after a failed attack.
Meanwhile, Carney pauses at the end of the hallway, turns back, big grin.
Yeah.
And invites anyone who's interested for a skate on the Rideau Canal later.
Huh. Classic Canadian move. Breaks the tension.
Totally. The Batavian reporters just love it. Laughter, cheers. It's a very Canadian ending to a very intense showdown.
And the media coverage afterward, did it reflect this outcome?
Overwhelmingly. CBC praised his economic precision and patriotic fire, highlighting the Mexico alliance.
Okay.
BDC said his unity message resonated globally, focusing on the Ishiba handshake. The Guardian called it a masterclass in political brinkmanship, especially the energy pivot.
So the narrative was set pretty quickly.
Yeah, and clips of the handshake, Carney's call for respect, they were everywhere.
So when we boil this whole deep dive down, what's the core takeaway for you?
I think it really emphasizes that idea of Canadian unity, right? That collective strength from, PEI farmers to Nova Scotia fishers, allowing the country to stand firm.
Yeah, and Carney playing that role, the goalie defending the net, using those alliances with Mexico, Qatar, to actively reshape things, not just react.
Exactly. It wasn't just defense. It was strategic repositioning on trade, on energy. A really fascinating case study.
Absolutely. It shows how diplomacy and economic strategy can play out even in a tense, unexpected confrontation.
So, thinking about all this, what are your thoughts? Were you impressed by how Carney handled that pressure? Did you feel a bit of Canadian pride, maybe? Or just find the whole political maneuvering fascinating?
Let us know what you think. Drop a comment. Just type Canada. We'd love to hear your take.
And yeah, definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this deep dive. We'll be back exploring who might challenge Canada next.
And maybe we'll even see if Karoline Leavitt tries for a rematch sometime down the road. You won't want to miss it.